Hello everyone, I'm Chester44 and welcome to this Let's Play of Blades of Avernum. Last episode, we completed the scenario Frostbite, a wonderful scenario, I must admit, I really enjoyed it. And that was the guy's second scenario. Now we're moving on to his third scenario, Tales from the Tabard Inn. And as you can tell, we have a new image here. He included some images that are supposed to replace various portraits and icons and stuff like that in the game. So, yeah, I kinda did, admittedly. He included a zipped folder which should have the original stuff in it, so we're going to do that. Now that we're here, let us go to this scenario. Let's see. From the Tabard Inn. A package, an assassin, an execution, and a man named Sly. Scenario by Lazarus. Contact yada yada. It's crucial that you read the README file before playing the scenario. The scenario changes point of view fairly often, and it is important that you switch your character's graphic to reflect these changes. Again, this is explained in the README. You'll be playing as a singleton all scenario, but it doesn't matter what party you enter with as long as it is in a god party and has a human in it. At the start, your party will be cut down to one, and it will remain that way until you leave scenario. When you leave scenario, your party will be restored, your items and spells returned, and you will be sent on your merry way. Enjoy. You pick up your pace as the sun sinks lower and lower on the horizon. The sooner you get to Sigasal, the better. It's dangerous for an unarmed man to travel the Grey Road alone, even during the light of day. At night, well, it's not a pleasant prospect. You certainly wouldn't be traveling this late if you didn't absolutely have to. You left New Haven several hours later than you'd intended to. It had been difficult to leave behind the generous crowds. You made a pretty penny in the extra time you spent there, but now you're paying for it. You're sure the bandits in these parts will appreciate those few extra coins you picked up. You chuckle to yourself, but it turns into a sigh. If you get to Sigasal safely, you'll consider yourself fortunate. If you get there with your purse still intact, you'll consider it a miracle. Alright. Okay, we can change our graphics easily. Well, this is the graphic we need, so let's move on. As if the threat of imminent death wasn't even to worry about, you also have your performance for the infamously hard-to-please Lord Aradin looming, and you don't have any new material to add to your act. You struggle to come up with some new song or dance, but the shadows along the side of the road and the bandits that could be hiding in them are just too distracting. You fully expect to get booed out of Aradin's hall, but not showing up to your appointment tomorrow night would be many times worse. Many bars have been banned from the city of Sigasel because of Aradin's wrath, which is why you're going to be traveling late into the night. Being late could very well be more costly than being waylaid. Your heart leaps and all thoughts of Lord Aradin flee when you see the man standing in the road ahead. The sunlight is fading fast and you can't see much of him, except that he's a large, broad-shouldered man. He holds a massive sack which rests on the ground, but doesn't appear to have any weapons. He doesn't appear to be hostile, but that doesn't really mean anything. He just stands there, waiting. Odd behavior, but not necessarily threatening. You approach cautiously, trying to avoid eye contact. Hello there, Master Bard! You nearly jump out of your skin when the man calls out to you. You would have been content to slink past and go your separate ways without exchanging niceties, but apparently this man wants to chat. At this point, it couldn't hurt to say hello. If he means ill, he can rob you either way. If he doesn't, there's no point in snubbing him and possibly sparking a conflict. He seems friendly, but you remain alert and ready to hightail it at any notice. Hello yourself, stranger. What are you doing out here? I'm waiting. What for? Oh, no reason in particular. Here seemed like as nice a place to wait as there, and there is so far away. He chuckles and you smile along, even though you aren't sure why he finds loitering to be so amusing. And where might there be? He completely ignores your question, instead posing one of his own. And what about you? Why do you travel the Grey Road at this hour, and why the long face? You find yourself answering before you even realize what just happened. I'm headed to Sigasel, where I plan to get chewed out for having a bad act. No new material, eh? That's a shame. There's not a whole lot you can do when you've got no time and no inspiration. It's funny you should mention it, though, because I was just thinking about how a story I heard tonight deserved its own song. You aren't particularly interested in hearing this crackpot's story. Every fool you come across has some story that they think is worth spreading, and very few of them are actually correct. You decide to be polite, though. An ill-mannered bard is soon an unemployed bard, and a traveler who's impolite to unstable strangers is soon a knifed traveler. Oh? And what story is that? It isn't my tale to tell, Master Bard. I haven't the time nor the talent. He points to the west. Head to the Tabard Inn if you want to hear it in full. With that, he hoists his sack over his back and heads off. Wait, where are you talking about? Where are you going? I've done enough waiting for now, he shouts back over his shoulder as he trudges away. If you want to hear a tale that will impress even your Lord Aridin, then the Tabard is your spot. You won't regret it. The broad-shouldered man, bent low under the weight of the lumpy sack, fades away into the shadows. How thoroughly peculiar. Sigasal, 15 miles north. Tabard Inn west. As you continue on the road to Sigasal, a weird feeling of uneasiness begins to nag at the back of your mind. It takes you a while to realize you're actually still preoccupied by your strange encounter with the traveler. If you want to hear a tale that will impress even your Lord Aridin, then the Tabard is your spot. You find to your surprise that you've come to a halt. You shake your head and begin to walk again, but a short distance later you again catch yourself standing still. You just can't shake the traveler's words from your head. You find yourself looking back down the road towards the intersection where you first met the man. Perhaps stopping for a drink at the tavern he kept talking about. The Tabard? Wouldn't be such a bad idea after all. You won't regret it. The realization that you're actually heading towards the Tabard Inn makes you feel so ridiculous that you stop and begin to turn around. But something stops you. The traveler was certainly peculiar, ridiculous even. But then again, it's peculiar folks who lead to the best stories of all. There's something about this whole thing that has you curious. You know that you have hours to reach ahead of travel ahead of you before you reach Sigasal, and you must reach Sigasal before the night's over. But still, you keep finding reasons to take this slight detour. You need a rest, your throat is parched, and your canteen is near empty. You have plenty of time for this short stop. The excuses go on. And even if nothing comes of this, even if the traveler was a loon and this Tabard Inn is no different than any of its dull brethren, you'll have some time to clear your mind and think about what you'll do when you get to Aridin's court. It's definitely a win-win. And so you continue to stifle the voice in the back of your mind that says this certainly is nothing but a wild goose chase, and continue traveling west. It isn't long before you reach the Tabard Inn. In fact, it comes up so fast that you almost pass it by. You're oddly disappointed to find that it doesn't appear to be any different than any of the other of the roadside inns you frequented. You sheepishly realize that you were half expecting something straight out of a story. You hope that the traveler knew what he was talking about. This certainly seems like an unlikely place for something noteworthy to take place. Nothing worthy of song happens in places like this. Looks can be deceiving, you reassure yourself. Colorful characters can be found in as great a supply in dives across Assyria as in fairy tale inns. But although the Tabard is certainly no fairy tale, it is no dive either. It is thoroughly ordinary in every way imaginable. Right in the middle of the two glorious extremes, too common for a prince and too reputable for a black knight. This is certainly a waste of time, but at least you can get some liquor out of this. You wouldn't want to leave completely empty-handed. Yeah, I'm uncovering the whole map even though I don't have to. Shut up. There appears to be a... Oh, there's someone there too. Alright, let's go in. The Tabard's common room is like any other you've seen, and you've seen many. You breathe deep. The scent of roast meat and good spirits reaches your nostrils, and the sounds of lively conversation buzz through the air. You smile to yourself. You're in your element here. You've spent many a night beside a warm fire with harp and lap at inns just like this one. You're pleasantly surprised to find that the other patrons appear to be a bit less mundane than simple peasants. It's a slim chance that they'll have anything worth hearing, but then again it was a slim chance from the start. I'm sure we'll find something. A man sits by himself here, quietly picking over a plate of boar and stew. He's a lean, well-muscled man, but he must have a hearty appetite as there is a stack of several empty plates next to him. He wears clothes befitting one of the merchant class, though his simple and close-fitting garb is a bit more dirty than you'd normally expect to see on a merchant's back. You wonder if he'd mind some company, and notice that he doesn't have anything to drink. Hopefully he's not one to drink alone, not abstaining. Just not one. Actually, I think that might be how these things start. A somber man hunches over the bar, pressing his clasped hands to his forehead. The drink in front of him is untouched. Doesn't look like he'd make very good company, or welcome it either. Still, these depressed types sometimes have the craziest stories of all. A man wearing motley sits here. He has spiky blonde hair, and his face seems to be forever fixed with a vacant expression. His mouth is set in an unchanging half grin. His eyes widen when he realizes that you intend to talk to him, not his robed companions. "Bottom's my name. A silly name, Bottom. A foolish name for a foolish man. That's what they tell me." "What do you do?" "I help my masters. I don't like the cooking and cleaning, or caring for stinky horses, but when they do a show, they let Bottom help out." He beams at this. "Shows? So you're a performer?" "No, not performing. Bottom isn't a performer, just me being me. People get angry when I knock things over and make mistakes and say stupid things, even if I don't mean it. But at shows, they laugh at Bottom, and they think he's funny and fun. That's why I like the shows. When I spill and drop and mess up at chores, nobody smiles or laughs. But when Bottom falls or makes a face or goofs up, it's all right." "Do you like working for your masters?" He grins. "Oh yes, very much. Quiet Master makes colorful pictures in the air, so when Bottom is practicing or doing chores, he is never bored. Other Master talks so nicely and teaches Bottom how to act so people won't yell at him when he's off stage. They are very nice. Things are very much better than they were before Bottom started traveling with the Masters." In your absence, Bottom has returned to his own, apparently amusing judging from the smile on his face, thoughts. But when he notices you're here to talk to him again, he sets him aside to speak with you. "Do you have any good stories for me?" He launches into a rambling, disjointed story about a chef and a bandit lord. You're having trouble seeing how any of it fits together to make sense, much less how he saw it fit to call it a good story. About halfway through, at least you assume it was halfway over, he comes to a sudden halt. "Master says I talk too much sometimes." He grins and shrugs. "The things are very exciting in my head, but he says they aren't when I tell them to people. So I try to keep them up here." He taps his head. "They're very interesting if you could see them." "You're sure they are?" This man wears long purple robes embroidered with golden runes and other apparently arcane symbols. He is currently engaged in what appears to be a rather one-sided conversation with the similarly dressed man across from him. When he spots you, he greets you and motions for you to take a seat. His partner remains silent, as does the motley-clad man next to him. An odd crew if you've ever seen one. "Who are you?" "You can call me Charm. Stage name, but it's as good as any, I guess." "What are you doing here?" "Seemed like as promising a place to do a show as any. We're traveling performers, you see. You may have heard of us. The Phantasmal Flavors?" "No." "Shame. You won't find a better show in Assyria, but we don't always get the recognition we deserve." "What type of performances do you put on?" "The mundane, the spectacular, and everything in between. Bottom here does the clowning, juggling, acrobatics, and the like. Strange is a master illusionist. You wouldn't believe what this guy can do. And if you saw, you wouldn't believe it wasn't real. And I do pyrotechnics." He holds out his hand to demonstrate, and brightly colored sparks begin jumping from his palm. "I work the crowd, too. I'm the showman of the group, I guess. The ringmaster." "Wait, those sparks, the robes... You aren't really a wizard? A rather mundane purpose to put my training to, I know, but in these days we can't do much better." "But practicing magic is illegal here. What are you thinking?" "Wizardry is illegal, but stage magic isn't. The authorities see what they want to see. Clever men who fool the audience with sleight of hand or some nonsense. Nobody wants a wizard in their town, but everybody loves a good diversion. So as far as they're concerned, we are stage magicians. The real deal, masquerading as impostors. How much more ridiculous can it get?" "Nobody catches on?" "I'm sure people realize what we do is beyond the scope of trickery and stage magic, but arresting two wizards isn't a task any town's gods want us to tackle. We don't stay in any place long enough for the authorities to muster the will to throw us in jail, and usually we're all right. We've only had one confrontation, and thankfully it didn't turn violent. We got ran out of town, though. The one-sided conversation is resumed in your absence, but the roadman seems content to cut it short to converse with somebody who will actually respond. Your companions don't seem to do much talking. He glances at the man across from him, who hasn't said a word all this time, and grins. Yeah, Strange is a damn good illusionist, but not so great when it comes to conversation. I do most of the talking, needless to say, and when I'm tired of talking to myself, Bottom's good for a short chat. Small doses of Bottom are probably best. But Tish? Any good stories to share? Storytelling was never my thing, not that I'd share them if I had any. If I handed out my act to any performer I'd met, we'd be out of business in a short minute. I suppose that's fair. You can't see any part of this man beneath his robe, the hood of which hangs low over his face so as to conceal all of his features. The drink in front of him remains untouched, and he sits in total silence. The man across from him, though, chats away, unfazed by his companion's unresponsiveness. You take a seat, hoping to be more successful in getting an answer from him. Who are you? The man remains silent. Any interesting news you might share? No response. Nothing at all? Still no noise from the depths of the man's hood. You wonder if perhaps the robe is actually empty. Kind of rude of you to ignore me like this. Well, that's strange for you, not much of a talker. You're momentarily shocked when you hear his voice, but you realize it came not from the hooded man, but from his companion across the table. You might as well save your breath, because you aren't going to convince me to waste any of his. What do? You watch perplexedly as the man holds out his hand, palm upwards over the table. You nearly leap from your seat as it suddenly bursts aflame. An intense blue fire surrounds the man's hand, yet it isn't consumed. You watch with fascination as the flame gradually grows larger. Different colors flicker through it, sometimes to form patterns and shapes. They vanish too quickly to be recognized. You find yourself at the center of the flame's blue glow as it grows to fill the room. The flashes, too, have increased, and when they come together, they form shapes and images, even battle scenes. Battles, palaces, faraway lands, and fantastic creatures flicker around you. Then suddenly they're gone. The man's hand is back in his lap and no longer aglow. He glances around, but nobody else in the room seems to have noticed the display. That was amazing. What was that you just did? The man remains silent. And I just noticed, the clown, he's got the avatar of a king. Fascinating. The innkeep of the Tabard is a large, ruddy man with a thick beard that seems to be trying and failing to conceal his large smile. He beams as you approach. Greetings, traveler. A bard, are you? Well, I'm sorry to say I can't afford to hire your services. Times are hard, you know. But I'm not opposed to exchanging a pint for a song if you're inclined to entertain tonight. But don't let me push you into storytelling if you'd rather not. I have that habit, you know. Sucker for a good yarn, I guess. Well, just take a seat and I'll get you whatever you need. What can I get here? Oh, we've got rooms, we've got food, we've got booze. Tonight's dinner is roast boar and vegetable stew, and I've tapped a cask of dark ale for the occasion. You can get a mug of ale for 4 gold, a plate of food for 6, or both for 9. The room doesn't interest you much. You've got more traveling ahead of you tonight before you can rest again. But the drink and hot food sound appealing. The meal and drink, if you would. Bailey takes your coin and gives you an empty plate and a mug of ale in return. Help yourself. The stew is in the fire, as is the boar. Take plenty. Seconds don't cost nothing. Bailey smiles as you approach the bar. Well, have you decided to spin us a tale yet? No, don't feel like I'm pressuring you or anything. Just being friendly, not pushy. Anyway, what will it be? Any good stories for me? Nah, I'm not much of a storyteller myself. I consider myself a connoisseur of fine tales, and I'm always looking for new ones to enjoy and judge, but I can't brew the things for the life of me. You bards have my full respect. The difficulty of telling a story and doing it justice just isn't understood by most laymen. I just don't have the talent of a delivery. So what types of guests are here today? Let me see. There's this rather somber fellow. He indicates a man sitting down at the end of the bar. He's been here all night and hasn't said a word to me. Then there's that talkative chap over against the wall. He seems to go out of his way to make an ass of himself. He and his buddy are soldiers, I'd say. And that grimy-looking man in the corner probably hasn't bathed in a month. But he's got coin, so who am I to judge? The trio in the seats near the fire are some type of performing troupe. Strange folk from what I've seen. Wizards, I think. Not that I'm one of those type of people, but you know what I mean. They're not bothering anybody, so I'm fine with them. There was a man here earlier, though. Real shady fellow. Wasn't sorry to see him go. Looked like the dangerous sort. That's the sort worth fearing, not mages. You help yourself to a hearty serving of stew and roast boar. It's hot and fresh and tastes delicious. Can hardly wait for seconds. Not many inns are this generous with the food. Okay. Why am I not wearing that anymore? Alright. Who are these people? You haven't seen clothes as pitiful as the ones on this man in quite some while. He wears ragged, threadbare teal robes that look like they haven't been washed in recent memory. The wearer matches him fairly well. His hair and beard are long, unkempt, and caked with dirt. He has a wiry, almost emaciated frame and gaunt face. A sorrier or less cleanly specimen you rarely see. He looks up from his large plate of food when you approach. He grins nervously and stammers, "No problems, are there, sir?" "No, I'll just be leaving." Alright. Two men occupy this table, sharing a pitcher of ale. They appear to be soldiers, although for what lord you cannot tell. You aren't familiar with the strange crown emblem on their breastplates. Neither protests when you take a seat at their table. They seem to be in the middle of a rather heated, though not actually angry, argument. "I'm telling you, Vince, there's no way he would stand a chance in that fight." "It doesn't bloody matter how good the Highlander is, the cat has range. Those things are born with bloody bows in hand. You think he couldn't hit that ox? There's no convincing you. You're too bloody stubborn." "You settle this," the soldier acknowledges you for the first time, not bothering to ask or give names. "Who wins in a fight between a Nephil and a Highlander?" "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." "What? A cat person versus a mountain man? Kitty versus a barbarian? Feline versus almost man? Still don't follow? Man, where the bloody hell have you been?" "Any good stories to share?" "Not at the moment, but catch us on the return trip and we'll have a classic for you. The Tale of the Hunters, they'll call it, and sing it any place where singing's done. You look like as fine a fellow as any to write it. What do you say?" You've lost me again." "Not your bag, eh? Nah, don't worry. Somebody'll do it. If killing a legendary creature won't earn us a song, I don't know what will. That's how it works, right? Ain't that why we put up with this shit, so singing types can write us a song?" "But what is it you're doing that needs singing about?" "Well, surely you've heard, man. I thought they'd have you folk on notice. Such a wondrous tale, full of chivalry and gallantry, fierce fights and brushes with death." At this point he leaps onto his chair and brandishes an imaginary sword, thankfully leaving the more substantial one in its sheath. His companion, clearly embarrassed by his friend's drunken antics, smiles despite himself. After nearly losing his balance and tumbling to the floor, he seems to realize that he's in no condition for these stunts. He concludes, as he lowers himself back into his seat, "And, of course, the eating of cold rations and freezing of the ass regions." He laughs uproariously at this, and his companion adds a chuckle. You might have some fun sharing a pitcher with these two, but they don't seem to have anything productive to offer. You take your leave, but they don't seem to notice your departure. Okay, that's basically the same thing. Actually, hold on. This guy. He doesn't respond. Nothing in there. I'm not going to be able to pick any... Oh! A tall man wearing a long black cape stands in the dim light of the inn's back porch. He's staring off into the forest to the north. He whips his head around as you draw near. When he sees that you aren't a threat, he relaxes and removes his hand from beneath his cloak, where you can imagine it flew to some unseen weapon. He is an intimidating man. He wears a strange dark mask that covers his entire face, and his swirling cape has the rather disorienting effect of distorting and blurring his outline. The two make for an almost otherworldly appearance. He doesn't say anything, just stares at you silently, awaiting an explanation for your presence. I should be going. You back away into the inn, apologizing for intruding. The strange man turns away without a word and resumes staring off into the forest. Okay. Anything up here? You don't have a room for the night and aren't planning on staying the night anyhow. Slinking around the guest rooms when you aren't yourself a guest isn't really encouraged. Fair enough. A pretty young woman wearing dirty white robes sits on the ground here with her back to the wheel of a trade cart. A plate rests in her lap, and she looks like she's about to begin eating. Leave her be. As you approach the stable hand, you are almost struck in the face by a pile of something too smelly to be dirt. He glances up, alerted to your presence by the expletives you were muttering. Oh, hello. Sorry about that. He sets aside his pitchfork and wipes his hand on this filthy apron before offering it to you. You tentatively shake it. The name's Mac. Sorry about that. Didn't see you there. You have a horse that needs stabling? What do you do here? Mac looks at you for a moment to make sure you're serious. Well, I'm a stable hand, so I run the stables. I clean the stalls, feed and look after the horses, and make sure they're ready to go when it's time for our guests to depart. Do you like working here? Well, I love horses. I can't see myself doing something that doesn't involve them. Not such a big fan of cleaning out their shit, but what can you do? Any good stories to share? Well, I can't say that I have any. Not much goes on in a stable at an inn. At least not anything anybody wants to sing about. I suppose that's fair. What's that? Oh, it's a shovel, of course. Alright, that looks to be everything in the inn. Now, from what I read in the README, because I did look at the README, always a wise idea to look at the README, you never know if there's stuff you need to know. Tales from the Tabard Inn is a collection of 5 stories that do connect to each other. You won't fully understand what's going on until you see all 5. And the 5 stories are listed as Knight, Merchant, Prisoner, Priestess, and Bounty Hunter. It's told that there's no specific order that you have to do in, but the recommendation in the README is that if you have to, that's the order you'd go in. Knight, Merchant, Prisoner, Priestess, Bounty Hunter. Now, based on what I saw of the images that there were and the descriptions of these various characters, here's what I'm guessing. This guy here is the Merchant. This guy is the Knight. This guy is the Prisoner. This is the Priestess. She's also the only female in here, so it makes sense. And the guy back out here is the Bounty Hunter. So, I am going to try and go through these stories one by one in that order. I mean, that's kind of how it's supposed to be, but still. We'll start with the Knight, move to the Merchant, talk with the Prisoner, chat with the Priestess as she eats, and then go see the Bounty Hunter. Right. So, that's what I'm going to do. But, we're going to start that in the next episode, because this episode's gone on long enough. A nice intro to the Tabard Inn, where we are currently staying. Next episode, we'll begin our stories, beginning with the Knight. But that'll be in the next episode. So, until then, I'm Chester44. That is Bard. This has been a Blades of Avernum Let's Play, and I shall see you all next time.